Books. Everybody.
Okay, this has nothing to do with the video, but I just wanted to show off this book holder thing. Maybe everyone knows this exists, but I found out only recently that these little thumb book page holder devices exist, and they're kind of like pop sockets for your books. You hold it like this. It takes so much tension off of your thumb, and are you kidding me? That's so smart. Anyway, if you haven't seen these, they're everywhere. You can get them on like Etsy or wherever. Highly recommend. Hello, welcome back. My name is Yuna, and this is my channel where I talk about books. And today I'm going to go through the books that I'm most excited to read in 2026. The TBR is miles long right now, so obviously I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I've collected a list of, I think, maybe 20-ish books that I am most eager to get to, and I'll try to rapid fire through them. It probably will be a little bit of rambling, but I'll try to move through them quickly. I do have a list of books that I'm planning to reread, old favorites or just books that I don't remember that well that I'm going to reread in 2026, and I might make a separate video for that, but those aren't included. These are all a list of books that I have never read and are new to me. Let's start off with fantasy books that I'm excited to get to. I'm going to kick us off with the Lie Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. This is just going to be representative of the entire realm of the Elderlings series. I have more of the books here, but I'm not going to hold all of them up. I have read the first trilogy, and for those of you who don't know, the realm of the Elderlings is a 16 book series that's broken up into 5 sub-series. And I have read the first of those 5 sub-series, which is the Farseer trilogy. I loved it so much, and I'm generally a binge reader. I don't like to break up series. I like to go all through them. But what I decided to do after reading the first trilogy was hold off on reading the rest of the series for now. That is because I've said this in other videos, but I am a save the best for last type of person, and I realized after those first 3 books that this was going to be some of the best reading of my life. People I trust who have read the series have said, it's going to rip your guts out. It's going to punch you in the stomach. It's going to have you in the fetal position crying. And that just sounds like a great time to me. I'm planning on reading it in the second half of 2026 so that I have that to look forward to. And I'm so excited and I'm so scared because if anything happens to the Fool or Night Eyes, I'm going to be a shell of a person. Next on my list of fantasy books that I want to get to is another series, and that is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I have had this series for a while and have been putting it off because, once again, I like to save what I think will be the best for last. So I read the rest of N.K. Jemisin's books already right here. They're all incredible, but I have a feeling I might love this one the most. The Broken Earth trilogy is, again, very loved. It's all over the internet. Most people, I think, start with the Broken Earth trilogy when they get into N.K. Jemisin. From what I understand, it's a dystopian, sci-fi, fantasy, climate disaster type of setting in the near or maybe far future. I'm not sure. It is a world in which there are these cyclical, disastrous, catastrophic climate events that happen that I think are called the 5th season. There are a group of people who have a magic power that are feared or hated, and the main character is one of those people who has powers. She is a middle-aged mother who I believe goes on a quest to find her daughter after some event. I love fantasy books where the main character is a middle-aged woman. We just don't get that enough, and I am immediately interested if I find out that it's not just some 18-year-old, young boy who is fated to be the hero of the world. And I love N.K. Jemisin's writing. I'm expecting beautiful, lush writing, incredible world building, and a very unconventional narrative structure. N.K. Jemisin, for me, is the queen of experimenting with the structure of her books and using narrative devices that you might not understand in the beginning, but they come together at the end and you're just like, oh my god, what a genius. So I am super excited to read the Broken Earth trilogy. Number 3 on my list of fantasy reads that I'm looking forward to, this one is a standalone, and that is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. Again, I've heard incredible things about this. Two warriors shepherd an ancient god across a broken land to end the tyrannical reign of a royal family in the standalone epic fantasy from the author of The Vanished Birds. So what I understand is that this book has a very interesting narrative structure as well. I think it's told almost like a story within a story. There's a play that's going on or some sort of performance of the the events in the story as they're also being told in real time, something like that. It's supposed to be kind of trippy, and I think it's supposed to emulate the tradition of oral storytelling among indigenous communities. So I think that sounds really cool. If I'm not wrong, I believe there's also supposed to be a queer romance in here, which I am always happy to see. And on top of all of that, this is supposed to have really lyrical, descriptive, beautiful writing, which I'm always down for, and I'm going to be buddy reading this with a friend, so even better. Another standalone in the fantasy category for books I want to get to this year, Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. If you've seen my most disappointing reads of 2025, M.L. Wong's other book, Sword of Kaigen, was unfortunately on there. Not because I think it was a bad book, but it didn't live up to the hype or to my expectations. I thought that was going to be like a top book of the year for me, and it didn't quite hit the way I was hoping. But I am going to read this book, and I'm hoping that I have a different experience and that I love this book the way that I was expecting to love Sword of Kaigen. The first woman ever admitted to a prestigious order of mages unravels a secret conspiracy that could change the practice of magic forever in the standalone dark fantasy from the author of the Sword of Kaigen. So what I understand is that this is supposed to be a dark academia type story with a morally gray, unlikable main female character. The book is supposed to touch on topics such as power discrepancies in societies, racism, oppression. That all sounds really interesting to me, and I am praying and hoping that this does what Sword of Kaigen didn't, and that at the end of the year I look back and think that this is one of the best books of the year. Wish me luck. Last in the fantasy category is a series that I don't have physically, and that is the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. This is a silk punk fantasy, so it's supposed to be an East Asian inspired epic fantasy. It's 4 books, and the books are so chunky. I looked at the audiobook for the final book in that series. It's like 40 hours long. Because anything ever that serious, but I've heard great things about this series, so I am really excited. I have heard that the first book is kind of a slog and reads more like a prequel or a history of the world and sets up for the rest of the series, but that's fine. I haven't read any silk punk fantasy. I'm trying to think. No, it'll be my first silk punk fantasy, so I'm really hoping that it hits and is worth the the page count and the hours of audiobook that I will have to get through to finish the series. We will see. Okay, never trust me, I lied to you. That was not the last in the fantasy category. I have 2 more. I have 2 more series, and the next is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy. I have the whole trilogy. I'm just going to hold up the first book. I've heard Joe Abercrombie hailed across the internet and back as the king of grimdark fantasy, and I've never read any Joe Abercrombie before, so this will be my introduction. I am really hoping to meet some interesting, morally gray, complex characters. I don't actually know very much about the premise of the First Law trilogy. I just know that it's grimdark fantasy. I think it's supposed to be traditional medieval high fantasy, but I might be completely wrong. And there is really nothing on the back of the book that explains what the world is about or what the story or plot is about. So I'm going to go into it kind of blind, and all I know is that it's grimdark. All right, now this is actually the last in the fantasy category, and that is going to be The Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. This is the first book, Malice. I have the whole series, but I don't feel like holding it all up, so this will just be representative. I did recently read his other series, The Bloodsworn Saga, which is a Norse Viking-inspired epic. I had a lot of fun with that. I loved the gods. I loved the shield walls. I had my criticisms, but I still had a great time. I don't really know what the premise is. I think it's another traditional medieval-esque high fantasy. I'm not sure if this one is also Norse-inspired. I've heard many people say that they actually prefer the Faithful and the Fallen series to the Bloodsworn Saga. We'll see if I agree. Moving away from fantasy, now we're going to hit literary fiction. I have a lot of books on my TBR that are literary fiction, but for some reason when I was making this list, I only pulled one title. I don't know why I did that, but whatever. Representative of the litfic books, we have Shark Heart, a love story by Emily Habak. It has a very bizarre premise, and I'll read you a blurb from the back. For Lewis and Ren, their first year of marriage is also their last. A few weeks after their wedding, Lewis receives a rare diagnosis. He will retain most of his consciousness, memories, and intellect, but his physical body will gradually transform into a great white shark. That sounds like a bit of a goofy premise, I know, but from what I have gathered, the diagnosis and this man's transformation into a shark and his wife and I think family's attempt to support him through that and to navigate that experience is supposed to be a metaphor for other chronic diseases or terminal illnesses and what it's like to be a caretaker or a person or a family member watching someone leave you slowly, even if physically they're there, as they're mentally changing and just transforming to be less and less of the person you remember. I think it can easily be a metaphor for things like Alzheimer's or dementia or Parkinson's. I feel like this has the potential to really devastate me. It's a book that I think will resonate with me for a lot of reasons, and I'm a little scared to read it. I'm very nervous and hoping that I don't become completely broken through the experience of reading this book, but I am excited. I have heard that it's very unique and tender, so I'm excited but scared. Scooting right along to sci-fi, interestingly enough, the 3 books that I have are all by the same author. It's not a surprise because she is my favorite sci-fi author at the moment. So in this category, we have A Psalm for the Wild-Built, A Prayer for the Crown-Shy, and To Be Taught If Fortunate, all by the great Becky Chambers. And Becky Chambers is the author of the Wayfarer series, which is my favorite sci-fi series, and A Close and Common Orbit was in my top 3 books of 2025. Love that series, love that book. These 2 books, A Psalm for the Wild-Built and A Prayer for the Crown-Shy, are set in the same world and I believe have the same characters, which are a robot and a monk. And I don't even know if there's really a plot to these books. I believe it's supposed to be more of like a cozy, introspective, philosophical series of conversations or experiences. So Becky Chambers does that sort of thing so well. She does tender explorations of what it means to be a person or to be compassionate and accepting. So I'm very excited to get to these, and I love little novellas, so I'm sure I'm going to love these. The other book, To Be Taught If Fortunate, I have even less of an idea what this is about. In the future, instead of terraforming planets to sustain human life, explorers of the galaxy transform themselves. Astronauts can survive in hostile environments off Earth using synthetic biological supplementations. I'm once again expecting not super plot forward and excuse me, and more of an introspective look at what it means to be a human. I eat that shit up, and Becky Chambers does it so well, so I'm very excited again to get to all 3 of these books, my 3 books in my sci-fi category. Now for nonfiction. I have a lot of books on my nonfiction TBR, but I'm just pulling the 2 that I'm currently most excited to read. The first is The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And Robin is the author of one of my all-time favorite books, Braiding Sweetgrass, which I read a few years ago and I do plan to reread. Braiding Sweetgrass was a book about indigenous knowledge, indigenous traditions relating to earth and nature, the reciprocal and gift-giving generosity of the world we live in, and the way that we could be living in greater harmony with the world around us. And I just thought it was so beautiful. It had me in tears at many points. I highly recommend that. So when I saw that she was releasing The Serviceberry, I immediately knew that I was going to read it. A bold and inspiring vision for how to orient our lives around gratitude, reciprocity, and community based on the lessons of the natural world. How, she asks, can we learn from indigenous wisdom and the plant world to reimagine what we value most? I think that is incredibly beautiful, and especially in an age of late-stage capitalism and consumerism, her books are a really wonderful way to reorient and reconsider and reroute in things more sustainable. I believe it's pretty short. I think the audiobook is only a few hours, and if she is narrating it as she did with Braiding Sweetgrass, I will absolutely be doing an immersive read. The second book on my priority TBR for nonfiction is Educated, an unforgettable memoir about a young woman who, kept out of school, leaves her survivalist family and goes on to earn a PhD from Cambridge University. It is a memoir by a woman, Tara Westover, and she was a late teen, 17, 18 by the time that she first set foot in a classroom setting because she was so isolated by her survivalist family. It seems like such a unique and singular story that Sarah can share in this memoir. So yeah, I'm very excited to read it, and I need to get my hands on a physical copy soon. Second to last category is horror/thrillers. Now, I've never been the biggest horror reader. I'm such a scaredy cat. I'm very easily startled. But in the last year, I started picking up more horror thriller books and really enjoying them. So I'm hoping that in 2026, I can keep up that momentum and find some really good horror reads. The one that I'm currently most excited for is Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng by Kylie Lee Baker. This is supposed to be a horror book that is set in COVID times. In this explosive horror novel, a woman is haunted by inner trauma, hungry ghosts, and a serial killer as she confronts the brutal violence experienced by East Asians during the pandemic. And again, I don't know a whole lot about this book, but I'm very excited to read it. I think the idea of combining a horror book with themes of racial violence against East Asians, especially in the pandemic, is very interesting to me. So I am going to be picking this up as soon as I can, and I will report back. Final category of my priority TBR is romance/romantasy. It's funny, I love love stories. I love shipping. I'm a huge shipper, but I find that I don't enjoy romantasy books very often. I have a hard time finding romance or romantasy books that I jive with. I think that for me, I really need romance to be believably and slowly developed. I need there to be really organic chemistry between characters. I don't like insta-love. I love a slow burn type of yearning. So I've had a hard time finding romantasy or romance books that I have loved, but I'm going to try again with the two books on my TBR list. The first of which is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I have read absolutely no Alex E. Harrow, but this book has taken the internet by storm. I feel like in the second half of 2025, I have heard almost no bad things about it. Actually, I don't think I've heard any bad things about this book. It's supposed to be an expansion on Alex E. Harrow's short story, Six Deaths of the Saint or something like that. I will probably read the short story before I get to the book. People who have, I believe, similar tastes to me have really enjoyed reading this, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. From Alex E. Harrow comes a moving and genre-defying quest about the lady knight whose legend built a nation, and the cowardly historian sent back through time to make sure she plays her part, even if it breaks his heart. I don't know if it's supposed to be a scenario where she's getting reincarnated or if there's different timelines or different realities, but I love time shenanigans, I love reincarnation shenanigans, and I love a lady knight. So I have my fingers crossed that I love this because I'm aching for a beautiful love story. If this fits the bill, I will be so happy. Second book on my priority TBR for the romantasy genre is The Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I have a iffy relationship with Rebecca Ross. I read both her Letters of Enchantment duology and the other duology with Elements of Cadence, or the one that's the sort of Scottish inspired one. I had the second book of the Letters of Enchantment series on my list of most disappointing reads of 2025. I did like the other duology, Elements of Cadence, more, I think. It was the same where it wasn't a home run for me, but I did enjoy that as well. And I think that Rebecca Ross has beautiful prose and a lot of potential in the way she sets up her books. I've heard many people say that this is their favorite Rebecca Ross book. Even people who didn't love her two duologies have really been praising this standalone, so I am keeping my fingers crossed that I love it as well. The book itself is a prequel, I believe, to the Letters of Enchantment duology. It's set in the same world, but I believe hundreds of years in the past, and it follows the gods of that world. Once again, I don't know very much about it, so I'll read you a part of the blurb. Set in the world of the gods first introduced in Divine Rivals, Rebecca Ross delivers a sweeping, beautiful adult novel filled with tension, romance, and dark secrets. That doesn't really tell me very much about what the actual story is about, but that's okay. I am keeping my fingers, toes, and eyes crossed that this is the Rebecca Ross book for me, because both of her other sort of series were okay, but I felt like fell short of the potential I sensed in her as an author and storyteller. I will report back and hopefully I will have nothing but good things to say. And that is the end of my priority TBR for 2026. And like I said, this has really just been a sampling of the mile-long list of books that I have and want to get to in the following year, including a list of books I'm hoping to reread, and maybe I'll make a video on that. These titles will probably pop up in future videos, future reading vlogs or monthly wrap-ups. So let's just all hold hands, have a little prayer circle, and pray for me that when I come back and talk about these books, I will be raving and saying how much I loved all of them and how they're all 5-star reads. That is what we're manifesting. Thank you for staying with me through that whole video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.